Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I'm Ron Luce, joined this evening by my guy, Steve. Steve, you are fresh back from the Great White North, where hockey is the national sport. How are you doing? How was your trip? How's things in the neighborhood as we wane into pretty much the middle of summer?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. It was a great trip. I was up in Quebec City. I hadn't been there since I was like 13 years old. That's where my mom's family's from. And I ate a ton of good food, especially a bit too much poutine.
No such thing.
Like that was that was something else. I had way too much. It got to the point where at the end of the trip, I had like a giant tub of it, and I was like, "All right, this is the last one of the trip. I'm good afterwards." So it was a great trip. Saw a lot of cool historical stuff, a lot of family history. Saw the Stanley Cup final in Canada. I was hoping to see the Oilers win, but obviously that didn't happen. But I'm glad to be back. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I am just excited because as everybody around Four Feathers knows, whether you're part of the show or not, this is like my favorite 14 days of the year. So I'm here for the rumblings. I'm here for the chaos. I'm here for the nonsense. That's what makes draft season and free agency season so much fun. And but other than that, man, I'm doing good. I'm not. I have not been north of the border, at least not recently. Last time I was north of the border was 2015, actually, right after the Hawks won the Cup. I was in Toronto, actually. So,
Oh yeah.
um, very cool city. Highly recommend if nobody's been there. I would like to get back at some point someday, at least for one more trip. But Steve, before we dive into everything Chicago Blackhawks, want to remind everybody, of course, follow us at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Steve has it locked down over on the Instagram side. A slew of us have it all together on the X side. In addition, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button here if you're watching along on YouTube, the On Tap Sports YouTube channel. We appreciate that. And you'll also know when all of our shows go live, including Four Feathers Podcast. So be sure to take care of some business there. And if you would like to give us some positive ratings wherever you listen to your favorite shows, we'd appreciate that too. And if there's things you think we can do better, we'd appreciate that as well. Constructive criticism is not frowned upon here at the Four Feathers Podcast. Steve, let's get into something that was maybe slightly frowned upon for God knows whatever reason this weekend. And that was on Saturday morning. A little Kyle Davidson over a cup of coffee, getting some business done. Chicago Blackhawks made a trade this weekend. First off, Ron Stradamus nailed it that they were going to make a trade before the draft. Happened a lot sooner than I was expecting. I was expecting it to kind of happen around today's show, maybe like tomorrow even, but we'll take it. We got our one. The Blackhawks send Joe Veleno, who was acquired at the trade deadline from the Red Wings for Peter Mrazek and Craig Smith. He's flipped. He's going out west to the Great Pacific Northwest. He will be a Seattle Kraken. And in return, the Blackhawks are getting former Colorado Avalanche, former Washington Capitol, and obviously former Seattle Kraken, Andre Burakovsky, to add into the fold. Burakovsky, 2 years left on his deal at $5.5 million per season for the cap hit. Veleno has just the 1 year left at just a hair under $2.3 million for next year. Steve, what were your thoughts on the trade? Now that we're multiple days removed, how you feeling now? What's kind of the pulse in your mind about this one-for-one swap between the Kraken and the Blackhawks?
So when this trade first happened, I wasn't really, I didn't really feel anything. It's Valeno who he didn't really finish the season like eye popping or anything, but at the same time, like, we got him for who he was. So when I saw Andre Burakovsky, I was like, it's not a terrible player to get in return for Valeno. But I did kind of feel the negative energy from, or kind of shared the negative energy that some people had. I felt like, it in the long term, like this trade really isn't going to mean jack shit unless like somehow Burakovsky revives his career. However, I thought, since we're taking on Burakovsky's 2 year contract, we're kind of doing Seattle a favor. So I was kind of on the lines of thinking like, could we have maybe squeezed in like a super late round draft pick from Seattle? I don't know. But that's kind of where I was leaning. But on the flip side of that, like if you remember how we got Veleno, we essentially flipped Peter Mrazek into Burakovsky. So looking at it from that standpoint, I'm already kind of seeing it as like, a win. Um, I think that if Burakovsky turns his career around and he ends up scoring a lot for the Blackhawks, it's going to be great. And if he doesn't, so what? Like, we got so much cap room that it's not going to matter. The one thing I am critical is I do feel like Kyle Davidson could have maybe pushed for a late round draft pick, but that's that's what I kind of see as like a negative point from the trade.
That's fair. I think I think all those feelings are fair. I think a lot of people felt, as you've quoted on this show before, very whelmed by the trade, and understandably so. The Blackhawks aren't in the business right now at this point in the rebuild of making like show-stopping trades. Even the Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno acquisition wasn't really a showstopper. Can make the same argument about Corey Perry at the time. Can make the same argument about last season. And they, the Ilya Mikheyev trade ended up working out great, but that was more now in hindsight, right? Outside of people who knew who Mikheyev was and what he brought. This trade to me is the prototypical. We're taking the biggest flyer possible because there's no risk and a ton of reward if this works out. Because to your point, and Frank Saravelli shared the same thought process that you just did. You essentially turned an expiring contract of Craig Smith and Peter Mrazek, who by the acquisition of Spencer Knight became, like, I hate to say it this way, useless to the Blackhawks. So you turned two effectively useless assets into a guy who, even for what I think a lot of people consider a bad season last year, was still almost a 40-point player. You'll take a guy who's got 40 points. The Hawks had 4 guys on the roster that touched 40 points last year. It's pretty miserable. So you'll take those kind of guys, right? And especially a guy like Burakovsky, who the more minutes he plays, and I did some research on this because I was genuinely curious, the more opportunity he gets in the top 6, or just by minutes, whether that's power play, whatever, he does better. Like Colorado, those 3 years in Colorado were his best seasons, he was regularly playing in the top 6 with better talent. In Seattle, he kind of got ushered down to kind of a third line role, and that's not really his game. When he was in Washington, they just had so much talent at that time because those were kind of the Stanley Cup run years. He didn't fit in the top 6. Here in Chicago, he's arguably going to fit in the top 6 very easily. I think you get him next to Frank Nazar. I think you get him next to Connor Bedard. I don't expect him to have an 80, 85-point season, but I think he's a player that could give you 45 to 50 points. And for $5.5 million, you'll take it.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people are pissed off because, like, we're talking about adding Burakovsky on the top 6. And, like, I think a lot of fans are viewing this offseason as a way to make this roster better for next year. So Burakovsky, like, if you're viewing it from that standpoint, yeah, he's not really the type of player you want to add on your top 6 because you don't know how much he's going to score. Even if he does, he's still a 30-year-old player. He's older. I'm sure you know more about his skill than I do, but like I don't know if he's fast, which is kind of what the Blackhawks are trying to build with this team. So like if you're viewing it from the standpoint of like we're trying to acquire a lot of good players to play around Bedard and Nazar, then yeah, like Burakovsky isn't that guy. So, like at the end of the summer, if there aren't any free agent signings, which I don't think there's going to be, or big trades, then yeah, like I would kind of be upset that like this is all we're getting.
Sure.
Is Burakovsky. Because if that's who the guy who's going to be playing with Bedard and Nazar, I'm not going to be super thrilled about this trade, but I guess time will tell and we'll see.
Absolutely. I think too, and maybe this is something that can give you some comfort. Maybe this is, and this is just kind of how I'm thinking through it. So obviously, if you disagree, you disagree. And this goes for everybody listening at home as well. Because of the rise in the cap, the Hawks really didn't do Seattle any favors. Like it's only about a net $3 million difference. Seattle still has like $18 million in cap space. They don't really have any important free agents they need to re-sign on their own roster. Riker Evans needs a new contract. He's probably the biggest name on their blue line. Capo Caco maybe on like a bridge deal because he did play really well once he got to Seattle. But their big guns are all locked up. So for Seattle, it's just having money to potentially dip into the market and make a free agency signing this year. Unfortunately, the longer and longer that the closer and closer we get to July 1st, the more and more underwhelmed I am by this year's free agency class. Because when we were talking about this, back in March, back in, even earlier than that, the trade deadline, Mikko Rantanen was still potentially going to hit the market. Obviously, Marner's still the top name that's going to hit. But a lot of these guys have, Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand. But guess what? Sounds like Sam Bennett's going back to Florida. It sounds like Marchand's going back to Florida. It sounds like Aaron Ekblad's probably going somewhere, but certainly he's not coming to Chicago. So unfortunately, it really feels like a lot of the Blackhawks, maybe potential targets or guys they could have went after this year, kind of got swallowed up. So now I kind of like the approach if you're Kyle Davidson and you say, hey, look, we're going to take a flyer on a guy who maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, so what? Joe Veleno, I'm not really worried about Joe Veleno because the Hawks have plenty of guys that can play fourth line center. I'm not worried about that position at all. What I think would be, what I think is now going to happen, and this is based on other things that we've read too. This is not just harebrained Ron ideas shooting from the hip here. But Ben Pope mentioned in an article a little bit earlier this offseason about how, Kyle Davidson was maybe getting a little impatient and was going to be a little more aggressive this offseason with trying to kind of accelerate the rebuild. But with how some of the kids played at the end, how good Renzel looked coming out of the woodwork, Moore looked like a solid player, maybe not like an uber scorer right away, but a guy at least that can be an energy player in your bottom six and do a lot of good things. Bedard, whether we like his season, or not, based on season grades, he's still improved by statistical speaking. Nazar, who's a guy that impressed all of us here collectively at Four Feathers, he took huge steps forward, especially scoring late in the year. I think there's a lot more faith now in what's already here. I think Kyle Davidson's looking at this offseason as we're going to start getting guys locked up. So I know how much money we have to play with next year because Bedard can sign an extension as of July 1st, as can Nazar, as can Spencer Knight. So you can get 3 core pieces on new contracts, at least for the next 3 years, right? Obviously, some of those guys are going to get more than 3 years. But what if you want to just give Spencer Knight a bridge contract? Or what if Nazar wants to take a bridge contract because he thinks he's going to be worth more in 3 years? Since that's where the window is, where everybody kind of expects the cap to go, that's how I think the Hawks are now treating this offseason. And Burakovsky, $3 million additional bucks, it gets you to the cap floor. Because I think, do you follow the Angry Bill Wirtz account on X?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Hilarious account, by the way. I don't know who runs it, but it's genuine entertainment sometimes. He made a really good point that I think a lot of people are forgetting about. The Blackhawks didn't acquire Shea Weber's contract for no reason. They need to get to the cap floor. All their good players are on entry-level deals, and the cap's rising exponentially. And there's not guys that are worth paying that money yet, probably until next year. So I think that's why this is going to be a weird offseason for the Blackhawks, because they're just kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And now that I'm kind of whelmed by the free agency class, I would be upset if they don't sign anybody. But at the same time, I'm kind of sitting back and just, waiting to see what happens. I think we're going to learn a lot when it comes to Friday. I really do. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think that's kind of where things are going to go. Quickly here, Steve, before we give you the floor for any final thoughts on the trade and continue our push forward, just some love to the comment section. Hello, Bobo Puck. hilarious name, by the way. I am Skokes. Of course, our boy Blue here in the comments as well. They're just sitting back, big chilling. And our boy Tom, he says, we got Misa. We're going to talk a little bit about that more later. So stay tuned. We're going to come back to that one in a little bit. Any final thoughts from you, Steve, before we go ahead and push forward with our agenda about the Burakovsky trade?
I do, and that's kind of what you're saying about reaching the cap floor. I think a lot of fans are also upset that like Kyle Davidson is thinking about reaching the cap floor and not signing these big name players. Like the fact that we have to go and get Shea Weber, who's like probably played in like 1921. Like that's how long ago he's played in the NHL. But like I also view it from the standpoint of Kyle Davidson doing his due diligence and just realistically looking at where this team is, which kind of scares me a little bit. But like the free agents have a choice in this. If Mitch Marner wants to go to a winning team, he's not going to go to Chicago. This team is still developing, is still learning. We're not at that point where we're going to be attractive to free agents. So that's not lost on the front office. So they're planning ahead for that. But I do get the frustration. It's just
absolutely,
you just got to be realistic with where the players want to go.
Definitely. And I think you and I both share in that frustration, right? Like I would like to see this team competing for the big free agents because that means they're ready to go win and do good things. Like that's not lost on us as we talk about the topic. I think it's more so just, again, getting that understanding of like, that's just kind of the nature of the market. And now Kyle Davidson really can't take advantage of these teams that are up against the cap, at least as much as he has in years past, because of how much the cap is going up and how quickly it's going up. So I think the Burakovsky trade was more Seattle wanted to move on from the player, and the Blackhawks were like, yeah, we'll take the flyer. Why not? Especially for a guy who they probably weren't going to keep and re-sign anyway in Joe Veleno. So when you think about it in that sense of like the no risk, high reward, sure, whatever. I also think too, though, because again, you keep these contracts short, 2 years for Burakovsky, you can figure out what Artem Levshinov, Sam Renzel, all those guys are going to cost as you continue to build this thing forward. So I think that's kind of the chess game that's being played as well behind the scenes as it goes. But speaking of chess games with the cap, Steve, smooth transition here into our next topic. A couple of departing names that we know about. Tony and I talked a little bit on the last show about the impending, quote unquote, TJ Brody buyout. That is all but confirmed. He was placed on waivers for purpose of buyout officially over the weekend. That it's not if, it's when at this point when that official news drops. But TJ Brody will move on. A $500,000 cap saving this year, which actually for the Hawks is kind of good because when you need money to get to the cap floor because all your players are $900,000 contracts, you'll take the $3 million and change from Brody this year, but still about a $500K savings in year one. Next year he'll carry it's like a $250K impact on the cap. So really no harm, no foul for the Hawks in the long term. And as we were about to jump on tonight and record, Frank, our boy Sarah Spaghetti and Meatballs, we say that lovingly. We do like Frank Saravelli around here. 3 names he mentioned that will not receive qualifying offers ahead of free agency, who are restricted free agents. And explicitly, 2 of them, Clem Costin, former Blue, now San Jose Shark, Cody Glass, relevant pick to Chicago because he was the number 6 overall selection, I believe, when the draft was here in Chicago back in 2017. He was the first ever draft pick for the Vegas Golden Knights. The New Jersey Devils, which are like his 3rd team now, are just letting him go to free agency. And Philip Kurashev, which I don't know about you, Steve. I'm not surprised. I expected this, especially given the year that he had. No more Philip Kurashev in Chicago. He's going to hit now unrestricted free agency with no qualifying offer. And that means he can sign elsewhere. You did not get to share your thoughts on Brody, so I'll shut up about Brody. I'll let you have the floor and also get your thoughts in the process about Philip Kurashev's impending departure.
For Brody, I think I am happy that he's not going to be on the Blackhawks roster anymore. That being said, I think we'll talk about it later on, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but it's looking like reading from some articles from The Athletic that if there's going to be any signings from free agents, that the Blackhawks might dig into some of the veteran defensemen out there, which to me, if you're wasting a buyout spot on Brody and you're going to go sign a Brody, why not just keep this guy? But he wasn't good. I think he was okay in the past on different teams, but for the Blackhawks, it just didn't work out. It didn't work out when we got the new head coach or the interim in Sorensen. It just never really clicked from him. And I even got into an argument on Twitter with somebody who was trying to defend TJ Brody's advanced stats, which I mean, like, if you're
TJ
just
Brody's
gonna go off of
burner account.
what's that?
TJ Brody's burner account.
Yeah, no, it was Brody. But I mean, it's just eye test versus analytics, right? Like, just because like the numbers might look good to somebody, you just gotta watch the game on the ice. And for Brody, he created a lot of errors, a lot of turnovers. I have a highlight on my profile somewhere of him attempting a spinorama in the neutral zone, and he just totally eats shit. So it's like that kind of stuff. It's like it's good to move on from him. And for my thoughts on Kurashev, it's honestly it sucks because he had that one season where he was really good with Bedard. A lot of people were saying that he could be a potential line mate for Bedard. I thought that was a little bit of a stretch, but at least I thought that Kurashev could be a potential middle six winger for the Blackhawks. And then last week he just didn't perform at all. So that to me was a big letdown. So I hope Kurashev, like, maybe a different team, a different change of scenery will do him good. But from what I saw on the ice, it was just more of his mindset where I remember if he made a mistake or if the Blackhawks were losing really bad, he would visibly kind of just slump his shoulders and give up internally. So to me, that indicates that's more of a mental thing, not really much as a talent thing. Because we know the skill's there. We saw it happen for a season. But that's what I got on those two guys.
Definitely. I think everything you had to say on Brody is spot on. Tom here in the comments says, Brody has been really bad, honestly. Sucks. He's a really good person and a hard worker. He was. He took it like a champ. I mean, he was benched. You didn't hear him in the media being about like, oh, and this and that. And he's still getting paid. I mean, that's the beautiful thing if you're him. You're still getting a nice fat chunk of money, even being bought out. So, yeah, it didn't work out. He's probably going to get a chance with somebody, even as like a depth defenseman. You have to think he's probably got at least one more contract in him before he hangs it up. So not much to say else there, but I agree with you on Kurashev. Like not this past season, so season prior was such a blip on the radar, right? He plays with Bedard, has 50, plus points, comes out of the woodwork. Everybody's like, wow, is this Philip Kurashev's breakout? Like, is he this 4th round steal of a pick from the Bowman era, like one of the few late round picks that seemingly worked out? Maybe this is the guy. Once upon a time he was pegged as like a 3rd, 4th line center, which would have been taken, and who knows, right? And then this year happened. He got hurt a little bit, but it also showed that, maybe that was just ability by availability, right? They didn't really have much. They needed players. Taylor Hall got hurt. So there was plenty of audition opportunity with Bedard for just about everybody on the roster. You influx Tyler Bertuzzi, you influx Teuvo Teravainen, and you influx all these new players, Ilya Mikheyev even. That opportunity went away, and then all the young kids coming up that were outplaying him then saw him go to, sometimes even the press box as a healthy scratch, which was unfortunate late in the year. So hopefully he gets another opportunity somewhere. I'm sure he will. He's still young enough. I think he's only like 25 right now. Maybe will be 26 by the start of the season. Super, super young. Somebody will give him a shot, surely, even if it's on a 2-way contract. And who knows? Who knows what happens? Hopefully it goes well for him. He was fun to watch in Chicago, but a guy now that they don't have to worry about taking a roster spot away too from potentially Oliver Moore, potentially excuse me, maybe Ryan Green if they feel like he's ready. Who knows, right? But it doesn't take away roster spots from guys who may get a shot. Well, who's got a shot? Because according to Tom, the Hawks got Misa. Do they? And that's kind of the meat and potatoes of our discussion here today, Steve, because we are coming live tonight here on Tuesday evening ahead of the draft. We will be live on Friday evening, or at least that's the anticipation. Don't shoot the messenger. But we should be live for the first round. So if you want to join us and watch along with us, please do. It should be a real good time. And then probably we'll have some type of post-game or post-draft show at some point, probably over the weekend then. But there's a lot of here, he said, she said, there's a lot of what ifs. I don't know about you, Steve. This is probably the first draft in at least my recent memory where like the first 3 picks can literally go any direction. Yep. I couldn't tell you the last time it was genuinely like this. There's a lot of chaos. Schaefer is expected to be number 1. But after that, there's reports that the Sharks really like Anton Frondell. Would that mean Michael Misa slips to the Hawks at 3? Is like, does it all work out and the hockey gods shine and smile upon the Blackhawks franchise and give them another big-time scorer to pair with Bedard and Nazar? There's a lot of what if coming into this upcoming draft. What do you think about some of these reports? Do you really think the Sharks are enamored by Frondell, or do you think it's just smoke and mirrors, as, you know, teams like to lie during the NHL draft season?
I think it's hilarious that there's a bunch of Blackhawks fans posing as San Jose Sharks fans on
I've seen that.
Twitter.
Blackhawks Cowboys, one of them. Hilarious. Absolutely hysterical.
They're just hyping the absolute shit out of Frondell for San Jose. And it's all based on like this report that apparently the Sharks have gotten interest in Frondell over Misa, and obviously the Blackhawks ideally want to get Michael Misa just because he's a center that could play well on the wing eventually, while Frondell is more of a legitimate center, I think, that plays a more complete two-way game. So it makes sense for honestly both teams if you look at it, but like we want somebody who could play on the wing with Bedard, so it's like we should probably get Misa if he falls into our lap. But if it turns out to where the Sharks are going to pick Frondell anyways, well, that's awesome. Then we get Misa and everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I was kind of hoping this week, and week's not over yet, is I wanted to see that 3rd overall pick get traded for something bigger, which it doesn't really look like it's going to happen unless, again, like you said, it's smoke and mirrors and all that kind of stuff. And like Elliot Friedman said, like this is the time where everybody lies. So maybe the reports about the Sharks are complete bullshit. And for the Blackhawks, like I have no idea, because we've been seeing a lot about Frondell and Desnoyers, and like, what if there's some weird thing where, God forbid, like knock on wood, that the Islanders with the number 1 overall pick get somebody else, which maybe could be their hometown kid, Hagens, and in just a sick twist of fate, the Blackhawks end up taking another defenseman. Somehow Matthew Schaefer falls to 3rd. I would actually cry. I don't want to see that happen, but I don't know. Like anything could happen. It's a weird draft. We were talking before the show where it's like we're both like kind of hoping for something really big to happen. Like I hope that's the case, because like now I'm kind of getting excited, and not necessarily with the Blackhawks. Like I want to see a big blockbuster trade happen at the draft. So I'd be kind of let down if it ends up being quiet and it's like, well, the Blackhawks drafted Frondell at 3rd overall and nothing else happened. So I don't know. What do you think is going to happen?
You know, there's a small part of me that does believe there is some genuine interest in Frondell. Like, I do actually believe Frondell has flown up draft boards. The reason for that, and I'm not going to sit here and claim I'm some, I said this before anybody else. I've thought it for a while, but never communicated it. I watched Anton Frondell's tape, even just the highlights, and I saw glimpses of a player, at least maybe not exactly the same, but in terms of, if we're talking model of toy, kind of reminded me a little bit of Alexander Barkov, who also had a crazy ascent up the draft rankings in 2013, right? Like, that was the Halifax Mooseheads draft. It was supposed to be McKinnon and Drouin 1 and 2 the whole way. Or a guy like Seth Jones going 2 and Drouin going, like, that was kind of the consensus top 3 was Seth Jones, Nathan McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin. Alexander Barkov comes out of the woodwork, goes 2nd overall, and I don't know about you, that worked out kind of nice for Florida. 2 Stanley Cups later, your captain. Things are good. Things are really good. And Tampa looked kind of dumb because Drouin didn't work out. And it's funny because it almost feels poetic, dare I say, Steve, that we compare this draft to the 2013 draft because there's so many connections to the Chicago Blackhawks from this draft. So who's to say Anton Frondell doesn't fly up and be like that Barkov ascent, even though a player like Misa and Schaefer are available? Because listen to this. Listen to how many first rounders from 2013 have Blackhawks connections. Are you ready for this? Like, this actually scared me as I was flipping through this really quick.
Bring it on.
Seth Jones, obviously, right? Drafted by Nashville, 4th overall in that draft. This also feels poetic because we're hearing a lot of chatter about top 10 picks being moved, which hasn't happened a lot at all in recent memory.
Yep.
But if you recall, the New Jersey Devils moved the number 9 overall pick to the Vancouver Canucks for a young Corey Schneider at the time. That was the year they took Bo Horvat with the number 9 overall pick. That was the 2013 draft. Let's keep it moving. Max Domi goes to the Coyotes, 12th overall in that draft. Nikita Zadorov goes to the Buffalo Sabres, number 16 overall in that draft. The Blackhawks just acquired the number 23rd overall pick, Andrei Burakovsky. Would you look at that? In addition, famed Blackhawks prospect who never panned out, Marco Dano, went number 27 in that draft. Your current third-line center, Jason Dickinson, went number 29 in that draft.
Wow.
And the Blackhawks at number 30, because they won the Stanley Cup, took Ryan Hartman.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that a wild first round? 12 years in hindsight.
Holy shit.
I'm telling you, man, to me, the universe is just telling us that some weird shit is going to happen because it happened in 2013 and the Hawks are right in the middle of it. To me, that's just a sign from the hockey god that some weird shit's going to happen. And I hope it does. I like weird shit. Like you said, if the Hawks traded number 3 for a legitimate player for the future and beyond, great. If they stay pat and take Misa, great. If they stay pat and take Frondell and he turns into Alexander Barkov, awesome. Who knows, right? It's a lot of what ifs, but like Skoke says, it just feels like destiny. It really does. It's kind of weird. It's a hard parallel to draw, but we tried to draw it, man. I think there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, though, to kind of summarize.
Oh, for sure.
Here. And it's going to genuinely be like, most people say, like, oh, the draft starts at this pick. Like, a lot of people have been pinning the Blackhawks pick is kind of where the draft starts. I think the draft starts at 1. I really do. Like, I don't even think the Islanders know what they're doing. I would expect it to be Schaefer, especially now amidst the Noah Dobson trade rumors. But who knows? Like, this is the first draft where I genuinely don't feel comfortable about who's going number 1. It should be Schaefer, but we don't know. Like, that's kind of, again, the NHL, the draft season chaos, as tonight's show is titled, of what we can expect. I have a question for you, though, Steve. Do you think there's any world of possibility where like a trade involving picks in the first round for Friday happens before Friday? Or do you think if a trade's going to happen, it's on the clock type thing?
That's a great question. I think because it's the NHL, if it happens, it's probably going to be on the clock.
Okay.
That's where my gut is leading me to.
I tend to feel the same way. I feel like picks don't get traded the way like NFL draft picks do, where you'll see number
Right.
one or number two get traded 2 months before the draft. That being said, I wonder if a team like a Pittsburgh or some of these other teams who maybe are hovering in that like 10 to 14, 15 range get hyperactive and are like, you know what? Screw it. We can afford to give up X player and an asset and go up and get a guy that we feel adamant about. Especially if you're going up to like 3 or 4, which I know there's a lot of people saying that Utah is 100% willing to move their pick. It's going to be interesting. It's really going to be interesting. I'm genuinely excited for Friday night. It's always, sometimes we get up for the letdown, right? There's some boring drafts, but I'm really hoping we get some kind of like, oh, really moments. I feel like we got that a little bit last year, right? With the Ducks pick. Everybody was expecting it to be Kevin Lindstrom, and it wasn't. And then everybody was like, well, shit, now, and then of course we learned later that, instead of the Hawks coming up to 4, Columbus is like, no, we want Lindstrom. So the Ducks screwed the Hawks by not taking Lindstrom, and maybe the Blue Jackets would have moved out, and maybe we wouldn't be worrying about who the Hawks are picking because the Columbus Blue Jackets would be on the clock at 3 instead of the Hawks, and Ivan Demidov would be a Blackhawk. But neither here nor there. Again, so that was some early chaos. So I wonder if we maybe get a little bit of that this year. I hope we do, because it's great entertainment for us as fans of this great sport. Steve, any other? Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, and it also too, because it's also the first time that they're doing the decentralized draft where
yes,
nobody's like in the building, and I heard that it sounds like they're gonna be going back to the normal way of things at the next year's draft. I can't remember where I heard that. I want to say it was the Blackhawks Breakaway podcast, but I plead, like, I hope so, because I think the COVID draft, that kind of sucked. And I mean, I'm sure they fixed things by now, but like this has the potential to be somehow overhyped up, and then it just ends up being super boring.
100%. Yep. I hope it's not overhyped as well. Over things that get me up for the letdown make me sad. So I don't want to feel like that on Friday, because then I'll be extra disappointed for the rest of the weekend then after it's all said and done. Not current per se, but a former Blackhawk in the news today for an incredible reason. You did a great piece, Steve, over at ontapsportsnet.com. That is 100% a shameless plug. Go check it out. Duncan Keith is a Hockey Hall of Famer. I think every Blackhawks fan knew it was going to happen. There was no doubt about it. 2 Norris trophies, 3 Stanley Cups, a couple gold medals with Canada. I mean, this guy was the epitome of a workhorse, was the true number 1 defenseman that every team needs. Conn Smythe in 2015 with that incredible run. Everybody remembers the goal where he follows up his own rebound in Game 6. Ultimately, the game winner, right? The Kane goal, just insurance at the end. What a career. I'm almost glad that everybody forgets that he was an Edmonton Oiler, because I genuinely did for a hot half a second. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. He played that one weird year in Edmonton. Just the true epitome of, like, if there is a player not named Jonathan Toews or Patrick Kane retiring and being put in the Hockey Hall, and we're talking about like jersey retirement for the Blackhawks, we all know you got it back there. That number behind you is going to be hanging in the rafters sooner rather than later at the UC, because what a career from Duncan Keith, and it's capped off, rightfully so, with an immortal place in the Hockey Hall of Fame up in Toronto.
Hell yeah. I was I was excited when I saw that because like you were saying with his game 6 goal in 2015, like I remember that. That was it was just one of the best moments in I think in his career. That whole postseason was Duncan Keith's. So it's a nice, I don't want to say a surprise because we all knew he was going into the Hall of Fame, but like I wasn't expecting to find out today. So when I saw that on my phone, I was like, fuck yeah, like I want to see that.
Mhm.
So soon enough, like we'll see his number retired. I don't think the Blackhawks are planning on retiring any numbers this season.
Mhm.
I think they mentioned that somewhere, but
Yeah.
uh, I don't know if that's just they don't want to take away from the 100-year celebration, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
He's absolutely deserving of it. The next guy I want to see in the Hall of Fame is number 28, Steve Larmer. I think one day that's got to happen. Like he's also an incredible player. Both
Mhm.
Duncan Keith and Larmer, Ironman players, incredible endurance from both of those guys. So it's good, and I'm glad that you feel that that you forgot that Duncan Keith was an Oiler. I cannot get that out of my head. Every time I see the Oilers play, that is
The
that's what's in my
first
head
thing.
was yeah, especially when I see number 2 on the ice. I'm like,
Mhm.
man, Duncan Keith, he wore number 2 in an Oilers sweater. So that irks me, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to try to blank that out from my memory too.
I'm firmly going to put the Duncan Keith Oilers thing in the same boat as like the Blackhawks Bobby Orr thing. Like
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
exact same thing. Like you were
Oh
there
yeah.
for 1 year. It kind of was just a formality, but you were great with a different original 16. So I just man, what a career from him. Just such an incredible player. And just another one of those guys from that run, man, that just it makes your heart smile a little bit seeing those guys get recognized because there's probably a couple more, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Marion Hossa, I think is already in, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, Taves and Kane will be in when they retire. Um, probably from there, I don't think any of the other guys are Hall of Famers per se, which sucks, but a lot of those guys I think will now be you mentioned right no jersey retirements during the 100th year. I think that's part of it. They don't want to take away from the 100th year, but they're also introducing the Blackhawks Hall of Fame where hey, you maybe aren't good enough to get your number retired, but you're sure as hell good enough to be in our Hall of Fame. Here you go. I think that's the world where you're going to see the likes of Corey Crawford. I think that's the like of where you're going to see some of those other guys. Duncan Keith's obviously going to be in there. All the number of retired guys are already a part of it. I also believe, I think I'm holding out hope that they dual retire 7, man. Like that's the only other one that I think is on the edge that people need to just get behind. But like Patrick Sharp, Nick Chalmers, those are going to be the Blackhawks Hall of Famers without a doubt. You know what I mean? So I think with that being introduced this year, that's part of the reason. But maybe in 2026 we'll get to see number 2 go up into the rafters. That'd be pretty cool, especially now that he is a Hall of Famer. Steve, the last thing outside of our habitual segments here that we have to talk about, I just threw this one in here because I was just curious of what you were thinking. We kind of already touched on some of it. So maybe just to elaborate a hair more. Kind of what's the vibe you're getting from the Blackhawks going into free agency? Because I unfortunately will not be able to join you guys on your draft recap show after the weekend is over. I will be out of the state, will not have my equipment, so I will not be checking back in until after free agency is already started. So with that in mind, I just kind of want to get your vibe check. Like what are you going in expecting the Blackhawks to genuinely do in the free agency period?
Specifically for free agency, I think it's going to be pretty quiet. Kind of like what I alluded to earlier. I was
Mhm.
reading The Athletic, and you can kind of piece together what the front office is thinking when like insiders like Powers is saying things because I imagine he's getting fed breadcrumbs from somebody that knows something. And it sounds like they, according to the article, that they might be looking for another veteran defenseman. So like, I have a feeling if there's going to be a free agent signing, it's going to be somebody like that. And like I said before, like all the good players, they're going to want to have to come to Chicago. And it's just like, if I'm Mitch Marner, I'm not going to want to come to Chicago because even if Bedard is great and you got Frank Nazar, that's not going to be enough for me to want to go there. I want to go win a Stanley Cup. So, and beyond Marner, there's nobody else. Like you said before, Rantanen, he's already locked up in Dallas for a while. Marchand, Bennett, those guys are going to be in Florida. Ekblad, like the Blackhawks don't need him. They don't need to be anywhere near him. He'll go to a winning team. And it's just, I think it's just going to be quiet. I think if you are expecting a big move from free agency, you're setting yourself up for a huge letdown. It's just not going to happen. I think if there is a big move, it's going to be through the trade. And as we've seen, that's kind of already being a little quiet.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they're going to do anything of substance, by substance, I mean like it's going to really get people talking. I think it's going to have to be a trade. I just think that's the place where things can get more interesting. I wonder, and this is just a question because I don't know if they're going to dabble. I wonder if the Hawks dabble in the restricted market this year with offer sheets, because everybody keeps talking. Like, I think that's the thing that's kind of going undersold right now is like everybody was talking early about it. They were like, oh, it's the summer of the offer sheet. And then like nobody's talked about it since. I wonder if that's something, right? Because the Blackhawks went and got their third round pick back from the Hurricanes for this season. So that way they had their first, their second, and their third. I wonder if there's, Dylan Holloway was a great example of, and even Broberg were both great examples of, hey, you couldn't afford to bring them back, Edmonton. Could you imagine if Edmonton had those two guys for the Stanley Cup? They probably win the whole thing. St. Louis comes in and says, hey, we'll take them. And arguably those two players helped St. Louis get to the playoffs because they're young. They're going to be there for a little while. Holloway had a career season. Broberg was great. I wonder if Kyle Davidson dabbles in that market, especially for a team that maybe has a big decision on their hands for another player, and they have to kind of decide between the two where you can maybe give enough compensation where the other team has to genuinely think about saying no. I genuinely wonder. But from an unrestricted standpoint, I totally agree with you, right? Nikolai Ehlers, another name. He's going to a contender. Granlund's older. Tavares is older. Like, these guys are probably going to contenders. Bennett and Marchand going back. Besser is probably one of the fewer younger names who is going to go somewhere. Probably not Chicago, though. Patrick Kane, obviously. Jamie Benn. It's a lot of older names. I do think they're going to sign somebody at forward. I just don't know who. I think it's going to be like probably a guy who is a really nice like third or fourth line player where you can maybe flip him for value at the deadline. And if any of the kids, Oliver Moore, Riley Green, if any of those guys are not ready for the NHL right away, that player can kind of keep that spot warm until they are if they need to go to Rockford. So I do think a forward will get signed. I just don't think it's going to be of a high caliber. And I know you'll hate to see it, Steve. I think they are going to sign a depth defenseman. But a guy that I think the terminology that's being thrown around that I tend to agree with is it's going to be a guy who's easily scratchable at this point in his career. Like he's there to like, oh, somebody gets hurt or somebody wasn't ready and maybe they need to play a little bit of third pairing for 40 games. It's going to be that kind of thing, I think, is what we're going to see. So I'm intrigued to see as well. But again, that on the other side of the NHL draft. So we will certainly see what happens there. Steve, I'm going to let you ruffle some feathers. Hammer it home, man. Put the nail in the coffin.
You kind of alluded to it with the veteran defensemen where they could be scratchable. Another concern I think fans have with the defensive core right now is you got Connor Murphy, who's a veteran. If you could pair him with one of the other younger guys, if Levchinov makes the roster, and then you have this mythical pretend veteran that will sign in the offseason that you could do the same thing, pair him up with a young guy. You don't need that. You don't even need Connor Murphy. I think you are totally fine if you run the entire blue line with all these young guys. Alex Vlasic he's 24. He's got enough time under his belt where he's a veteran player. Like, he's played enough time in the NHL where, sure, he's got some growth to go through. He's got some developing and rounding out of his game, but he's a competent defenseman. He's fine. And all these other young defensemen that they have on the blue line, if Kyle Davidson truly has the confidence in these kids that he drafted, I would be okay with running them together, especially Sam Renzel, because like you said in the beginning of the show, he impressed the front office at the end of last year. We still don't know what he is because it was such a small sample size. It came after his time in college. So like his adrenaline was like going high. I'm super high on the kid. I think he's going to be awesome, but you still don't know what he is. But if you're that confident about him, I'm saying run all the kids together on the blue line. Let them figure it out. I thought they looked fine together last year. You don't need a Connor Murphy. You don't need another TJ Brody to save their, I don't even know what they're protecting them from this point, like their egos. Like they'll make the mistakes and they'll be fine. They'll learn from it. That's my ruffle some feathers segment.
I respect it. I respect it wholeheartedly. I do think there is a world where you're fine, and if Louis Crevier is your seventh defenseman, I think you can get by genuinely when it's all said and done. Wyatt Kaiser's still in the fold. They have to give him a new contract if they see him sticking around. Does Artem Levchinov make the team out of camp? Does Sam Renzel make the team out of camp? I think those are some of the other things. But again, if you're looking into the quote-unquote depth defenseman market, to me that says those two are probably making the roster. You know what I mean? Like, I think they would be talking more about adding another veteran if those two aren't going to be there. Tom says here he's a Crevier believer. That dude's a tank. He's huge. He's going to be really good, trust me. And, whether that, I think all of them have an opportunity but they just need to play. Ethan Del Mastro, I think, could come up and be fine. I agree with you. I think Connor Murphy being the only quote unquote old guy is okay. But again, I understand the need for a depth guy, maybe even just, if nothing else, for a locker room presence, really, at this point. Think another Pat Maroon almost from this past year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Steve, I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to ruffle. I might ruffle your feathers in the process here.
Uh-oh.
But
oh, yeah.
We're talking about depth defensemen. And like, when I think depth defensemen, I think guys that when I look at the free agent market, I go, this guy's not getting a contract anywhere else for more than the vet minimum. Even the guys like a Brian Dumoulin and some of these names, like, they're probably going to get another deal somewhere for like decent money, right? How poetic would it be if the Blackhawks on this year's roster not only had Shea Weber, Nashville Predators legend, but also signed Ryan Suter just to piss off Nashville Predator fans? Because Ryan Suter's old. He's up there. He's like 38 years old. His dad played for the Hawks. Like, is there any intrigue in putting on the sweater like your old man did? And just, I would rub it into every single Predators fan's face that I meet. And they'd be like, Weber's not even playing. I'd be like, I don't care. He's technically a Blackhawk. And for that reason alone, I hope it pisses you off. And then Ryan Suter could play like 40 games. And then it would really, really, really piss them off even more. I think that would be just spectacular.
Oh, man.
Just to, if for no other reason, because see, Steve, I don't know if you know this about me. I hate the St. Louis Blues. Genuinely. I hate the Minnesota Wild. Detroit sucks. That always stands. But there is no team in the NHL that makes my blood boil, and a fan base that makes my blood boil more than the Nashville Predators.
I feel the same way.
So if we can piss off those disgusting mustard cats, I'm going to take it. And if it means Ryan Suter and Shea Weber technically being on the Blackhawks roster next season, I'm for it. I'm 100% for it. Might even buy jerseys just to rub it in a little extra. Oh, it'd be awesome, man. Absolutely freaking awesome. I love every single second of it. So that's my Ruffles and Feathers. Steve, I don't have any stick taps. I don't have any stick taps this week. Actually, I do. Stick tap to you for eating copious amounts of poutine on your trip to Canada.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That's worthy of a stick tap in itself and taking in the good cuisine of Eastern Canada. That's my only stick tap, though. I'll let you have this one, man. What you got for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a stick tap to a recent guest of the show, the prospect Don. This dude is killing it. He's doing a lot of he's like reaching out to a lot of big people in the media and getting on interviews. He's going to be at the draft this week. So if you're really into prospects, follow him on Twitter at the Prospect Don. He's got a YouTube channel. This dude is super knowledgeable on prospects, and I think he's doing a really good thing for the hockey community, where he's building his own community and he's sharing a lot of knowledge with people. So good on him.
Hell yeah. Big shout out to Anthony, the prospect Don. Yeah, I mean, it's been fun to follow along and kind of see what he's been up to. I feel like we kind of got him at a good time because he's just gone on this media tour. He's talked to Scott Powers. He's talked to a bunch of other big names. And it's all, again, great content, having great conversations with people. Prospects is his jamma mamma, but, you know, he's always talking as a part of his community about just everything and the happenings of, you know, the world of Blackhawks, but also the world of the NHL. And I think right there with you, Steve, a huge follow, must follow for Blackhawks fans and a friend of the program, which we always appreciate. We got to give love to those that are friends of the Four Feathers podcast. Well said, Steve. Before we shut this thing down, we have to talk about what's on tap next. As everybody knows, and their brother knows, the NHL Draft is this weekend. Round 1 will take place on Friday evening. That is a 6 o'clock Central Time start. Put it in your calendars, just so you know. It's a little bit early. It's out on the West Coast in Los Angeles. At the end of this week, Saturday will be the conclusion of the draft, rounds 2 through 7. That's an 11 a.m. Central Time start, so 12 o'clock Eastern Time. So, Steve, you'll be having your Cheerios when round 2 is kicking off on Saturday morning. The Blackhawks have a ton of picks. Remember, obviously they have number 3. They also have number 25 in the first round. And then from there, they have 34 and 62 in the second round. They have 66, which is their own pick that they got back from Carolina in the third round. They have 2 4s in this year's draft, 98 and 107. And then they have the 162. I believe that's a 5th or a 6th rounder. I think it's a 5th rounder. That's not true. That's a 6th rounder, I think. Yeah. That sounds right. I think that's a 6th rounder. And then they have 2 7s. They have their own 7th, and they acquired the one in the Soderstrom trade a little bit earlier in the offseason. I think everybody kind of forgot about. I did too, actually, until I went and looked, and I was like, why do they have 2 7s? And then it was like, oh yeah, that's right. They just got that one from the Bruins. So 194, 197. So they're pretty much back to back there in the 7th round to close things out. And then, of course, my Christmas morning is July 1st as free agency opens, and I will be glued to my cell phone. This is my public warning to my fiance. She will probably hate me for it, but I will be glued to my cell phone all morning, all afternoon on July 1st. So, sorry, babe. I love you. She knows what she signed up for. When it's all said and done. Steve, before we get out of here, because the next time we'll talk to everybody will be hopefully for our live stream on Friday, assuming everything goes according to plan. Any final thoughts from you before we shut this thing down?
Nope. All I got is let's go Hawks.
Hell yeah, baby. Again, ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on the socials. Go ahead and check out everything in Chicago sports. Follow us again at Four Feathers Pod. I'm at Loose on Tap. Dirty Third 81 is where you can find Steve, and you guys all know where to find Tony. He's at Tony on Tap as well. And Blackhawks fans, if you like basketball, the Bulls, the NBA draft is literally, it'll be today in like an hour. If you're in the Chicagoland area, the Bulls, big selections coming up. Could be a lot of big trades. NBA has been kind of crazy. Be sure to follow Bulls on Tap for all of that good stuff. If you're in baseball mode and you're pissed off about what the Cubs are doing, or you're just pissed off at the Chicago White Sox, because everybody is angry in Chicago nowadays, follow at Cubbies on Tap on socials, but Cubs on Tap, Sox on Tap, they got you covered. And of course, for those football fiends out there, it's kind of the dead period of the year, but the Bears on Tap guys have got you covered. All the good stuff over at ontapsportsnet.com. Matt with a great question here. He says, what is happiness? I don't know. As a Chicago sports fan nowadays, there's not a lot of it, but hopefully, Steve, we get some happiness this weekend with the NHL draft and then free agency. Hopefully we will see you guys live on Friday. And of course, the boys will be back following the conclusion of the NHL draft some point toward the end of the weekend or into the early part of the week. And then we get free agency. And then we get to really talk about the fun stuff. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. Steve, you said it best. I'll echo what you had to say, my friend. Let's go, Hawks.